Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has said anti-Semitism is a grave health threat, essentially. This is what he sent out. He put a tweet out there and he says, anti-Semitism, like racism, is a spiritual and moral malady that sickens societies and kills people with lethalities comparable to history's most deadly plagues. In recent years, the censorship and false narratives of woke cancel culture have transformed our great universities into greenhouses for this deadly and virulent pestilence. Making America healthy means building communities of trust and mutual respect based on speech freedom and open debate, is what he says. Okay, so I get that, when he's saying that racism, anti-Semitism like racism, sickens society and kills people with lethalities comparable to history's most deadly plagues. I guess, if you say, well, the Holocaust killed 6 million Jews, then, and plagues, that's a lot of people and plagues could kill that many people. And so racism could end up killing. But I mean, racism doesn't do the actual killing. This is like saying the gun just kind of killed the person. No, maybe it was the person behind the gun who killed the person, right? That was the tool that they used. Racism is, and anti-Semitism is a tool used, I suppose, to justify killing people. But why is the Secretary of Health and Human Services, okay, let's first talk about that. Then he attaches this, writes this whole thing up. And HHS-ED, GSA announced additional measures to end anti-Semitic harassment on college campuses. So it's one thing for him to just come out and say anti-Semitism is like a plague and is killing people, but then he actually unveils these measures. And these measures say the measures will include a comprehensive review of federal contracts and grants given to institutions of higher education that are being investigated for dereliction of duties to curb or combat anti-Semitism, violence, and harassment. So they want to crack down on universities. Here it says, today, the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, under Bobby Kennedy, Department of Education, and the U.S. General Services Administration announced a comprehensive review of Columbia University's federal contracts and grants in light of ongoing investigations for potential violations of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. Given Columbia's ongoing inaction in the face of relentless harassment of Jewish students, the federal government's task force to combat anti-Semitism is considering stop work orders for $51.4 million in contracts between Columbia University and the federal government. Oh, this is deja vu. Here's Bobby Kennedy, who fought against this kind of ridiculousness during COVID. And now here he is in a position of power enacting the same ridiculousness that the woke liberals did during COVID when they said we have to combat racism, that's more important than stopping this plague that we've scared you into believing is going to kill everybody, and you in particular are going to kill your grandma. And you have to stay 6 feet away from each other. You have to close down your businesses. You have to shut down schools, right? You got to do all of these things. And you're going to have, but it's okay to go out there and protest against racism, against, for Black Lives Matter, even though we're telling you all to stay away from each other. But in this case, it's okay because racism is a dire threat. In fact, that's what the CDC director, Rachel Walensky, said. She says racism is a serious public health threat. If you remember this, look at this one from the New York Post. This is from 2020. New York City Board of Health declares racism a public health crisis. NPR, dozens of public health and disease experts have signed an open letter in support of the nationwide anti-racism protests. Quote, white supremacy is a lethal public health issue that predates and contributes to COVID-19. What? What? I mean, this is the insanity that now Bobby Kennedy's bought into. And now he's saying, well, it's racism that's a problem. And not only that, but we have to crack down on university protests. This is just like what they did during COVID. If you were out there protesting, like Bobby Kennedy, against the mandates, then you were a health threat. You were a public health threat, and you needed to be silenced. You needed to be cracked down upon. You were bad. You were terrible. And we're going to silence you, censor you. We're going to defund you, debank you. We're going to do all of these things. And now Bobby Kennedy's behind that. I mean, what has happened to this guy? Yesterday, I spent the show. Here, stupid me, stupid me. Yesterday, there I was defending him when he was sitting there talking about vaccinating all the kids for measles, saying, well, he's never really said he was against the measles vaccine. I mean, he kind of, he's definitely pointed to the problems with it, but there I was kind of giving him the benefit of the doubt a little bit, or at least trying to interpret his words in a more positive light for him. I take it all back. What is this? What is this? So they're going to go, not only is this a total and complete infringement on the First Amendment right to protest, which a person should be able to do, what they're claiming that this is harassment of Jewish students. Harassment is illegal. If you want to crack down on harassment of students, then you take that up with the police departments. So I guess then you'd want to defund the police, I guess. Like, that's who you would take that up with. If Harvard or Columbia or whatever these, they're pointing out Columbia, what are you categorizing as harassment of Jewish students? That's the big question. Are you saying that a kid flying a flag for Palestine, or wearing a keffiyeh, or somebody that is wearing a Palestine pin that has the whole land of, the whole Holy Land, the flag over that, which all the Jewish students do, by the way, they'll have pins of the whole land that don't carve out Gaza or the West Bank, and they'll have the Jewish flag, the Israeli flag and the Star of David on it, right? So what are you counting as harassment of Jewish students? Just like during COVID, what did you consider to be anti-science or, terrorist? I mean, they were threatening anti-mandate protesters, saying that they were terrorists. So what do you consider terrorism? I mean, what are you considering harassment in this? I mean, this is just unbelievable. Says that the task force review is the first major action announced from the multi-agency task force to combat anti-Semitism created by President Trump's executive order titled Additional Measures to Combat Anti-Semitism. So if you thought, like sometimes those of us that like to give the benefit of the doubt wrongly, if you thought that Donald Trump was just signing an executive order to placate the Zionist lobby that has funded him, and it's just kind of a signaling, and there wasn't going to be anything that really happened because of it, well, this says otherwise. They're actually going to defund college education for students because to back Israel. I mean, really, to back Israel. That's really what this boils down to. Even Elise Stefanik, she calls it like it is. So she doesn't actually just, they're all calling it anti-Semitism, but she actually says anti-Israel here in her tweet. She says, under President real Donald Trump, colleges and universities will be held accountable. Anti-Semitism and anti-Israel hate will not be tolerated on American campuses. Promises made, promises kept, says Elise Stefanik. At least she's, I'll give her some credit. I'll give her some props right there. At least she's saying it for what it is. It's not just it's anti-Israel hate will not be tolerated on American campuses. Could you imagine politicians coming out now saying anti-China hate will not be tolerated? You cannot speak up against the Chinese government, or you cannot protest the treatment of the Uyghurs in China because you think they're being genocided. You can't protest China's anti-free speech laws or whatever it is you want to you're not allowed to do that. Otherwise, your university is going to be defunded, honestly. And they're saying, what you're not allowed to. I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting for the announcement from these guys of you can't protest against Russia or Ukraine or China or Turkey or Canada or the UK. You're not allowed to protest against anybody. Nobody. No, they just say Israel. If they weren't so blatantly bought off by Israel, and if you can't see that by now, you are hopeless at this point. I mean, or you are in a serious echo chamber where you just don't see it. But this type of, this is coming from UN Ambassador Elise Stefanik, and this is what she says. This was in response to Donald Trump's truth post where he says, all federal funding will stop for any college, school, or university that allows illegal protests. What illegal protests? Explain that to me, Mr. President. Agitators will be imprisoned or permanently sent back to the country from which they came. American students will be permanently expelled or, depending on the crime, arrested. No masks. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Well, there goes free speech. So I guess, here's this is the administration of free speech. This is why I did not fully back this administration. Because the writing was clear that this whole, when they did that whole, what was it that was done that what did they call it? Take the freedom. It wasn't Freedom Fest. It was like, you know what I'm talking about. And all those speakers went and I was critical of it because they were saying, oh, we're finally going to get our freedoms back under Donald Trump. And I agree. There's certain things that he's done that have been way better than Joe Biden, no doubt. But I was under no illusion that we were suddenly going to get free speech back. It was very clear that we were going to get some free speech back. Yeah, we could talk about now the COVID lab leak theory. Like now we could talk about that. But okay, but we can't criticize Israel very clearly. Not allowed. So we're just trading. And nobody cares about the COVID lab leak theory anymore right now. Nobody's talking about it. The government has pretty much said, yeah, that happened. Everybody say, oh, yeah, that happened. Okay, nothing to see here anymore. All right. But we're talking about funding the bombing and massacring of children, and we're not allowed to talk about that now. So that's the thing you're not allowed to talk about. It's two cheeks of the same ass. That is what we're dealing with. And we, the American people, are not going to be free, truly free, and have a free speech society until we root out all of these special interests from our government. The bottom line is we couldn't speak about COVID because Big Pharma had bought off our government, something that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. pointed out regularly, and he was a hero for doing so. And we cannot have a free society and a truly sovereign nation if we continue to allow ourselves to be bought off by a foreign government. And then the foreign government strong arms all of our politicians into censoring and silencing any sort of criticism of their country. Not our country, their country. You're allowed to say whatever you want about the United States, but you cannot, how dare you say that about Israel? I am just sick to my stomach about this. The fact that we are so blatantly, obviously bought off, and that Bobby Kennedy would come out and put this tweet out there and have, and this memo that they're going to be announcing that the Department of Health and Human Services, like, what are you doing what is the Department of Health and Human Services why are you doing a comprehensive review of Columbia University's federal contracts and grants? Like, what does the Department of Health and Human Services need? You know what, Bobby, we did not put you in office to do that. That's not what we were asking for. We wanted you actually to call out the vaccines that you didn't do yesterday, and wanted you to take on the processed crap in our foods and the vaccine schedules. And maybe you are doing a lot of those other things, but the trade-off, if it's, oh, you're going to rip free speech away from college campuses. I mean, the good news is this is all going to be challenged in court, and none of this is going to stand. A lot of Trump's executive orders at this point, they've all been tied up in court because we do have a checks and balances system. A president is not able to just kind of wave a magic pen and make laws happen, not without those being checked and balanced by the courts. And of course, the administration is attacking the courts and saying, well, the courts are, political and bought off or whatever. And some of these judges are actually Trump-appointed judges or Republican-appointed judges, and they're still saying, look, the rules are the rules, and you're not really allowed to do this. This has got to be one of those rules where you cannot say, we decide that your protesting is an act of harassment, or we decide that your act of protest is terrorism because we just feel like it because we don't like your messaging. So I don't want this for the COVID protesters, the anti-mandate protesters, the trucker convoy. I don't want that for them, just like I don't want it for the protesters that are protesting against Israel and on behalf of the Palestinians. And even if the protesters are out there saying, we support Hamas, they should be allowed to say that because we are a free country, or at least we used to be before we got bought off by the Zionist lobby. I swear, it just looks like Shmuley wrote this up for Kennedy. Shmuley schmoozed him and got him to support Israel no matter what, and even harm free speech, harm American students, because not getting an education and being expelled is healthy, right? I mean, that's healthy, I suppose. What are you doing? What are you doing, Kennedy? What are you doing? What are you doing? This is not what people supported you for. This is, in fact, why I stopped supporting you, was because of this type of behavior, very specifically. And you're just letting everybody down. And on all fronts at this point, 2 days in a row, he's pissed off quite a few of his supporters. So, I unbelievable, unbelievable. But the only thing to think of is that I do think that this will get tied up in court. I don't think this will actually stand. And I would like to just see a clear definition of what they mean by harassment of Jewish students. And nobody's okay with harassment, but I want to know what your definition of harassment is. Could your health issues be caused by an invisible enemy? Fatigue, bloating, brain fog? What if parasites are the real culprit? Check out this video.
What are the main differences between ivermectin and fenbendazole? These are two anti-pathogens used to treat parasitic infections and other similar types of conditions. They are used quite often in the oncology world to treat cancer. They both have as anti-pathogenic abilities.
Interesting, right? Did you know that 50% of Americans have parasites? They're everywhere in our food, water, and pets. They secretly invade your body, wreaking havoc on your gut, energy levels, and even your brain. And the mainstream medical system, they don't want you thinking about this because one great cleanse can change your life. Well, the wellness company has a solution for you: ivermectin plus mebendazole. Both FDA approved to treat parasites, now combined in a parasite cleanse combo that wipes out many of these invaders. Just fill out a brief medical intake form to get your 3-month supply. Lots of parasite cleanses are all over social media, but not the gold standard level. Maha is officially here, and the wellness company is making these hard-to-get medications digitally accessible so you can live your best life. Head to twc.health/Kim and use code Kim to save $90 off plus free shipping. Don't wait. Cleanse your body and take control back today. Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iversen Show. If you want to watch the full show, visit KimIversonShow.com. The show airs every Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Again, it's KimIversonShow.com. See you there.